Good morning, YouTube. It is currently 8:45 a.m. Thursday, May 12th. I'm getting ready to pull out of the Petro in Joplin, Missouri. This is where I stayed last night, and I'm on my way to Springfield, Missouri, which is about 75 miles away from here, with a load of rock that I picked up in Grapevine, Texas, yesterday morning. I could have made the entire drive all the way to Springfield, but it's pretty tough to find a parking spot at night in Springfield and around Springfield. So I opted to stay at this Petro. It's very big and pretty damn nice, really. They have 475 parking spots here, and there's also a couple of other truck stops, probably within about 2 or 3 miles. You probably have about, including this one, 6 or 7 truck stops, and you'll still see truck stops running out of parking spots. This one, like I said, has 475 spots, but they also have plenty of the make your own parking spot areas. And people were actually doing that before the parking lot filled up last night, just because there are a lot of areas that it's pretty easy to park in that really wasn't made for parking, but it can be pretty convenient, and a lot of people will make their own spots. If you're ever driving through the Joplin area, I would recommend to stop at this truck stop if you want to take a break. They have an Iron Skillet, a Taco Bell, a Pizza Hut, Caribou Coffee, and a Dairy Queen. They also have a convenience store and a shop where you can get plenty of truck driving gear or auto accessories as well. But I like coming here. They have a couple of semis inside the showroom that are classic semis. They are really neat. One is called Limelight. It is a lime green semi, and it's really super nice. I forget what the other one is called, but it is also super nice, and it's actually attached to a full-size 53-foot dry van, big box trailer. But anyway, so I picked up my load in Grapevine yesterday morning, and while I was sitting there waiting to get loaded, I looked at my load ticket and saw that they were calling the load 48,600 pounds. That was a problem because I'm not going to weigh any more than 80,000 pounds, and with my truck and trailer without a load coming in at almost 34,000 pounds, that was going to put me a little bit over.
Me in person, I'm just sure of that. But how about the rest of you boys? You think so?
Brought I'm not sure what they're talking about over the radio. I think I came in on the last part of a conversation. But anyway, I brought that attention. I brought my overload to the attention of a supervisor, and they fixed it by having the loader remove one of the pallets. I still wanted to go get weighed just to see how close I was. Even though I knew I was going to be under my 80,000, I just wanted to see how close I was. And I estimated my weight to be 78,000 pounds, and the scale said that I weighed 78,140 pounds. So I think I'm getting the hang of being able to pretty accurately guess my weight. I'm guessing that if they didn't remove the pallet, I probably would have been probably around 600 or 700 pounds over, maybe a little more. You know, I could have got fuel back there at Joplin as well, but you know, the fuel lines are long and I'm getting kind of a late start, and I just wanted to get to Springfield so I can get this off and excuse me, and I can get fuel later. But anyway, so yesterday when I weighed, I went to a Mr. Fuel, which is just outside of Grapevine, Texas. It was about 10 or 12 miles from where I picked up the rock. Unfortunately, the facility I picked up the rock from does not have a scale. I was kind of surprised because it's actually a really big place, and usually the bigger places like that will have a scale that you can check your weights on. But I probably won't go back to that Mr. Fuel. It was a nice enough facility, but it was so small and so tight to get around. They had very few parking spots, and the parking spots were full, and then there were also trucks making their own parking spot by parking along the curbs where parking is not to be, or not intended, I guess. And I mean, pretty much most of the lot is the fuel lanes and a scale. I don't even know why they have the scale, but I had to do something that is kind of a pet peeve of mine and be in the way of other drivers. You know, when I got there, there was a truck that was pulled off of the scale that had just weighed, and then there was a truck on the scale because there just was nowhere to go. When they cleared out, I pulled on the scale, and the only thing I could do when I got my weight was I pulled forward and ran inside to get my ticket and a receipt. I actually have to go inside to get my receipt because I get reimbursed for any out-of-pocket expenses that goes towards my truck, my load, or the company. And I need a hard copy receipt to turn in, so I have to go inside. Otherwise, there's an app for the CAT scales that I have used in the past with my other company, and it is so convenient. You get on the scale, you open up your app, and it gives you your weights right there on the app. You take a screenshot of it, and that's that. You know, your credit card information is in the app itself, and it just takes the payment right there on the spot. Unfortunately, like I said, you know, the way my company works is I have to have a hard copy receipt. So I had to block some, you know, basically get in the way of some people. And sure enough, when I came out, there was a truck on the scale that was waiting for me to move so they could get off the scale. And if they have to run inside, they were going to have to do the same thing because there was absolutely nowhere to park. I couldn't even park at a neighboring parking lot. I would have parked on the street if I could. I would have done anything I could to not be in the way, but I had to be in the way because it's one thing out here. I try to be very, very courteous to everybody. Okay, other drivers, I try to be courteous to them, and it pays off because, you know, I get a lot of drivers making room for me to change lanes. I've had you know, the four-wheelers, the passenger cars, and pickup trucks and all that, that will slow down for me and hold up traffic so I can change lanes if my exit's coming up. That's happened in traffic, you know, in heavy traffic especially. And, you know, I think that for the most part, the entire country really does get along. You know, you got some of the few haters out there that hate the semi-truck drivers, and you got some of the semi-truck drivers that hate the four-wheeler drivers, but for the most part, I think we all get along really well. You know, I've only experienced a few close calls in my driving where I was cut off or turned out in front of by a four-wheeler. I actually had one lady that was passing me one time, and she immediately cut in front of me and was going to hit the side of my truck. I had to slam on my brakes to keep her from hitting my truck. And that's one thing that I've talked, or that's one thing I do out here, is I kind of try and forecast what I think people are going to do. And just by watching her car and her actions, I believed that she was going to try and get over, and I wasn't trying to keep her from getting over, because we were in town, and I was probably driving 25, maybe 30 miles per hour, because we had just started out at a stoplight that had turned green. But she, I had to slam on my brakes to keep from hitting her. There was another time where a guy actually made a left turn, and it was on a divided highway. Instead of crossing the median, he made his left turn into the oncoming lanes, and I had to hit my brakes pretty hard for that one as well. Excuse me. And I sounded my horn. I pulled my horn, and he very quickly realized what he had done, and basically just swooped back around and did a U-turn in front of me. But nonetheless, I had to pick some seat cushion out of my butt, because there was a little bit of pucker factor there going on, because he could have caused an accident just simply by not paying attention. And you see a lot of you hear of a lot of people coming down on the semis during an accident, but I have seen very, very, very few. In fact, I really can't think of any instances I've seen personally where a semi was doing some bad driving or aggressive driving, other than maybe I had one semi driver trying to pass me on a 2-lane road one time, and it was very curvy and very hilly, and honestly, just semis shouldn't be passing each other on that road. It was so there are some spots where you can, because it gets a little flat and open, but it's so curvy and hilly, it's just not great for passing. The passing zones actually aren't even that big, and I was working with him trying to let him pass me, but once I realized that he wasn't going to be able to do it, I just went ahead and got back on it and got back up to 65 and just let him sit behind me until it opened up to 4 lanes. I'd slow down a little bit, and every time he would whip out from behind me, he would have to whip right back in. But anyway, so that's that. That's a little tidbit on trucking today. I don't think I'm going to give you a play-by-play on a case that I investigated on today's video. I think I'm just going to give a description of basically what a cop goes through during the day. I've said it before in one of my videos, and I've actually had this opinion of quite a while. For the people who either don't support cops or think all cops are bad or whatever, bottom line is there are people out there that they don't like cops, or they think the cops are crooked. I think that even our biggest critics would have a little bit more understanding if they followed somebody like me around for a week, and it wouldn't have to have been me, it could have been somebody else, and just see all the crap that we do and all the crap that we investigate. I actually had a boss one time. He actually gave a kind of a speech in roll call one day with us detectives, and he came up to detectives as a captain, and he had never been in detectives and didn't know what it was about, and he told us that his plan when he first came up was to get on those lazy detectives and make sure that they're doing their job and yada yada yada, this, that, and the other. But then once he got up here, he realized that we're actually doing a lot more work than what anybody ever even knows. There's so much going on that's not out in the open that people don't see from day to day. And basically, even some of the people that I worked with had had the opinion that detectives basically take coffee breaks all day, and but that's simply not the case. Are there times when I've taken a pretty lengthy break? Sure, there are. But there are also times when I go a week without getting anything for lunch other than what I can get in a drive-thru on my way to a call. But anyway, so basically what it's like to be a cop is, I guess let me rewind a little bit. I kind of got to thinking about this because about a year and a half, 2 years ago or so, I actually got into a little online debate on social media with a guy that I went to high school with. Both of us are much older, and to be honest with you, I'm surprised he kind of turned out the way that he did. He was always very popular in high school, was the star quarterback, and and he'd done some pretty cool things in his adult life as well. He's actually worked for the NFL doing something, but he had made a post one day around the time of the George Floyd stuff, I think. It was after that, obviously. But he had made a post of that about talking about how cops need to have bachelor's degrees and how they need training, and basically he was just trying to make it seem like cops are dumb. Excuse me. Well, I informed him that a lot of cities actually require a bachelor's degree. Some cities require an associate's degree, and some places only require a high school diploma or a GED. Thankfully, that's what my agency required, because honestly, college wasn't for me when I got out of high school. When I graduated high school, I graduated as a very mediocre student. I graduated with a 2.0 GPA. Not because I was dumb, but just because I didn't apply myself, I guess. I mean, and I think I turned out okay. But I went in the military, and that's just kind of what started my path to law enforcement. And I actually think I became a pretty good cop. I actually was one of these people that was trusted enough to be asked a lot of questions. I would have supervisors come to me and ask me questions. I actually made made jokes before that. I trained supervisors. I actually had one of my supervisors. He was told by the upper command that we were doing that he was doing a really good job on third shift because it was me as a detective, I had a partner, and then him, and he was our sergeant. And he told that commander, he says, no, it's all him. He says, he's telling us what to do. He's basically training us. He's the one that's basically holding third shift together. And so he, I definitely got a little bit of an accolade there. And they were actually giving him a challenge coin for his success of third shift. But he actually told them he was going to give me his challenge coin. And he did, and they actually gave him another one. But anyway, so I think it did turn out pretty good. So, but in addition to, whether or not a police department requires a degree or not, there's a lot of cops that actually have their bachelor's degree. In fact, I was probably in the minority of people who did not have a college education, and that actually kind of hurt me in promotion processes. Because of that, I had to take the test for detective 3 times before I got hired, or before I got promoted, because you were given extra points if you had a college degree. There were times when I think it was each time I actually scored higher on the test and the interview than people who got promoted before me because they had a 4-year degree and I didn't. So basically, they got, I think it was 4 extra points and promotions for detective between the number 1 slot and the number 5 or 6 or 7 slot. It can be no more than 2 points, and you're talking they get 4 extra points for that reason. So I would be towards the top of the list when we did test results and interviews, and then when they factor in college education and seniority, the college education will bump me all the way down to the list, and then my seniority would bump me up maybe 1 or 2 slots, because for seniority you only got 1/2 point per full year of service of seniority. So if I had 9 months of seniority over the next person, I did not get any points over him or her. But if I had a year, and if I had a year and a half over somebody, then I only got 1/2 point. And those people are going to be the people who's going to have the college degrees, and they're just going to be on the list ahead of me. Nothing I ever really complained about, because it is what it is. I knew the rules, and I had plenty of opportunity to finish my college. I just chose not to, and it's also probably one of my biggest regrets. But anyway, so in addition to the bachelor's degree, there are a lot of cops who actually go on to get their master's, and some cops who actually go on to get law degrees. I actually was friends with a guy that he had a law degree, and he was a cop first and practiced law just part-time on the side. And then I think when he retired, he practiced law full-time for a little bit before he passed away. It was really unfortunate because he's a really good dude. But he passed away a very short time after he retired, which, to be honest with you, it's a lot. That happens to a lot of cops. A lot of cops within, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years of retirement, or passing away for whatever reason. It's just, maybe it's the going through all the stress of life for that 20, or for going through all that stress for that 25 years of life, and then all of a sudden you get dumped into a no stress situation, or I don't know. But anyway, in addition to that, we have the academy. Our academy is something like 16, 18 weeks, something like that, and it's a college course, and multiple college courses actually, because we're getting taught, rules and procedure, or policy and procedure rules. We're getting being taught about evidence. We're being taught constitutional law. We're being taught criminal law. We're being taught legal updates. We're being taught one-on-one control tactics, driving, shooting. It's a lot, and you have to maintain a specific grade to pass. If you do not pass, you do not get your state certification. And that is what is set forth by our state. Our state requires that many, a set number of hours for everybody to be a cop. I think our academy actually does a little bit more, because we are a satellite academy of the state's academy. We're one of the few agencies in the state that can actually host our own academy, and so that's what we do. And sometimes we get people from other agencies, but most of the time it's just usually people from our agency that got hired going through the academy. So yeah, it's basically a college course, and then after that, you're with a field training officer for the next 6 months, getting hands-on training, and you're constantly evaluated, and you have, I think, twice a month evals, I think, that you got to turn in, maybe once a week. I forget. It's been a long time since I've been involved in that, but you're evaluated. And once again, if you don't make a certain score, you don't get hired. You will be told you can either quit or be fired, which has happened. And now with that, they can go to a different department because they have their certification by going through the academy, and all they would have to do is complete a field training officer program. And there are some cities that might suit some people better than our city. I mean, it is what it is. And then after you become a cop, you're mandated to take 40 hours of training every year to keep your certification. If you come up short, if you have 38 hours and you don't fix that and find a 2-hour training course, you'll lose your certification, or they'll be suspended anyway until you complete your training, and that's kept track of pretty well. I've always had plenty of training because there's also extra training on top of that. There were some years that I probably had around 80 to 100 or 120 hours worth of training. I was a homicide detective, and honestly, I could probably put on some homicide training, but I attended probably 4 homicide classes. I attended a very in-depth and high-speed narcotics investigations class that was a week long. And I mean, it's, so we're not dummies like a lot of people think. When people see that a cop made a mistake, and when the news is saying, oh, this cop did this when he shouldn't have done that, or she shouldn't have done that, yada yada yada. A lot of people are like, those dumb cops, they don't know nothing, and this, that, and the other. But I don't think what people realize is we may be wrong at that point, or the situation may have turned out differently at that point, but we only get to use what we are aware of at the time of the incident that we are dealing with. Okay? There could be one little sliver of information that we don't know, that's not made aware to us, that maybe come out later, that can drastically change an entire situation. I've had people that I thought for sure were going to go to jail, and they get arrested and brought down to the police station, and then I discover one little sliver of information that basically dissolves my probable cause to arrest that person. And they may still get paperwork filed up with the DA's office requesting charges, but they're not going to go to jail that night because of something little that happened that I discovered. So that's basically what it's like. We got to think about the Constitution and the amendments of the Constitution. We got to think about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. The first being the freedom of speech, the second being right to bear arms, fourth being search and seizure, the fifth being self-incrimination. There are others that we got to think about, but those are the big 4 that will probably be thought about by most cops on any given day. Probably every day that they work, they'll probably have to deal with one of those 4, if not all 4. But then there's other things that we got to consider as well. Recent Supreme Court decisions, past Supreme Court decisions, like MAPE versus Ohio, or Terry versus Ohio, or Miranda versus Arizona, or the Carroll Doctrine. The Carroll Doctrine is where we can search a vehicle without a search warrant if we meet if there's certain criteria that's met. Okay, and we got to be able to basically pull that out at the drop of a hat and be right about it while we're dealing with somebody who may not want to be arrested. So it's a stressful situation already. And then we have somebody sitting off to the side saying that, their cousin is a first-year law student and they know that we can't be doing this because their cousin told them and they saw it on Law and Order and CSI. And yes, that kind of crap really does happen. I've had, maybe not that exact verbiage, but I've had it pretty much happen just like that multiple times in my career. In fact, one story that I'll never forget that I tell quite a bit is I had a guy who told me, that I didn't have the right to ask for his ID, to make him give me his ID. I informed him that I did. He told me that he's a law student. I don't remember what year he was in, but he told me he was a law student and he knows that I am wrong. And what I asked him, I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, you go get your law degree, practice law for a few years, and then you might know as much as I do. because I made it my business to know as much of the constitutional law, criminal law procedures, all that as I could, because I want to be right. You know, I don't want to have to try and explain a mistake later. You know, and then after it was all said and done, you know, I ended up getting his ID, I'm sure, and I asked him. I said, what kind of law was he going to practice, or what kind of a lawyer he was going to be. He actually told me that he was going to be the kind of lawyer that's going to sue people like me for malpractice. Well, I informed him that malpractice is for lawyers and doctors, and that cops enforce law. We don't practice anything, so he probably needs to do a little bit more studying. But anyway, so that's the case, or not the case. Sorry, that's basically a day in the life of being a cop. You know, I mean, I've responded to shootings where, you know, somebody goes to the hospital for a shoot because they got shot, and I go to try and get information from them, and they get mad at me. You know, I ask them what their name is, and they're like, F you. I'm like, well, is that with an F or a PH? And really what I'll tell them is, look, I don't need to investigate your shooting if you don't want me to. You're my boss. If you say you don't want me to investigate it, I won't. You do have, you know, you are able to come to me in the future if you wish to change your mind. But if you don't want me to investigate it, I won't. And that actually calms a lot of people down, and they will just then kind of turn polite and tell me, yeah, I don't want you to investigate my case. I will thank them, pass them off a business card, tell them to give me a call if they should they change their mind, and get on to the next victim, because there are plenty of victims out there that do want me to investigate their case. So, yeah. That's that. That's the basically the daily life of a cop. You know, I hope my video was a little entertaining and maybe a little informative. And if you like it, hit that like button, that subscribe button, share, talk about my videos. Give me some feedback. You know, some comments. I'm a big boy. I can take it, even if you have some things you don't agree with, and I'll be more than happy if anybody wants to try and discuss anything. I'd be more than happy to discuss some things. And one thing about me is I don't sugarcoat anything. I'll tell you like it is, and if you don't like it, it's too bad. So until next time, y'all have a great day.